verses 13 through 17. Then Jesus came from Galilee to the Jordan to be baptized by John. But John tried to deter him, saying, "I need to be baptized by you, and do you come to me?" Jesus replied, "Let it be so now. It is proper for us to do this, to fulfill all righteousness." Then John consented. As soon as Jesus was baptized, he went up out of the water. At that moment, heaven was opened, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove and lighting on him. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
On May 5th, 1961, I was a sixth grade student at Thorndike Road Elementary School in Worcester, Massachusetts. That day, May the 5th, our class was on a field trip, and a number of us were bunched up in the back seat of the bus with the most amazing gadget we had ever seen, a transistor radio. And although the reception was not very clear, we were able to catch little snippets of reports from Cape Canaveral, Florida, where something called an astronaut was about to be blasted off into space on top of a rocket. And over the course of that day, we all learned the name of the astronaut, Alan Shepard. And for some of us, including me, there was born that day a lifelong fascination with the universe of space. Even today, when our family is vacationing in New Hampshire, one of our favorite things to do is to go out in the pitch blackness of night to lie on our backs and watch the Perseid meteor showers. And as we watch, we teach our grandchildren about the constellations and help them spot satellites smoothly sliding across heaven's expanse. And we try to explain to them how the universe is infinite and how astronomers are all the time discovering new things we didn't know existed even yesterday. Our understanding of the universe has grown since I was in sixth grade. And in many ways, my grandkids, though younger than I was, know a whole lot more about the vast reaches of space. They, like the famous Buzz Lightyear, are already familiar with the concept expressed when Buzz says, "To infinity and beyond." What an amazing universe we live in. Infinite in scope and majesty and mystery. It calls us forth to probe its secrets and discover its wonderful riches. And I feel that tug every Sunday morning when I back out of my garage and drive down to the church in the pre-dawn darkness. I find myself looking up and wondering what's up there. And I usually say a prayer that goes something like this: "Wow, God, you did good with this." Perhaps you can understand then why I was equally fascinated a short while ago to read in Harvey Cox's book, The Future of Faith, that just as infinite and full of mystery as the universe outside is the universe within. I discovered, I think, that the TV stars Star Trek, where Captain Kirk and the crew of the Starship Enterprise flew off into the universe to boldly go where no man has gone before, I've discovered that that was really an allegory for the adventure of probing the universe within ourselves. Can you fathom this idea? That within you is an infinite universe that holds mysteries beyond your wildest dreams. You are just as infinitely amazing as the universe out there. There is more to you than what meets the eye. And just as the outside universe holds uncountable mysteries yet to be uncovered, you have within yourself a universe of humanity that is every bit as infinite and full of undiscovered mysteries of who you are and what you are made of and what you are capable of doing. So a baby leaves its mother's arms and learns to walk. Wow. Two kids who couldn't stand their parents when they were teenagers fall in love when they grow up and become parents themselves and suddenly realize they have become their parents. And once in a while, ordinary people find themselves in places and circumstances where they rise to the occasion and do extraordinary things. I've always been fascinated by people like Ed Too Tall Freeman. Ed grew up in Mississippi, and after serving in the Navy during World War II and in the Army during the Korean War, became an Army helicopter pilot during the Vietnam War. On 14 November 1965, Ed was flying in support of an infantry battalion at Landing Zone X-Ray in the Loudon Valley. The Americans were virtually surrounded by a highly motivated and heavily armed enemy force. They suffered some of the heaviest casualties of the Vietnam War. They were almost out of ammunition. Things were so hot on the ground that the infantry commander ordered the helicopter landing zone closed. That was when Captain Ed Too Tall Freeman decided he had to do something. Risking his own life, Ed flew his unarmed Huey helicopter into the landing zone, bringing much-needed ammunition and water and medical supplies. Over and over and over again, he and his commanding officer, Major Bruce Crandall, flew their choppers through the gauntlet of enemy fire to resupply the men on the ground. And when medevac helicopters balked at flying into the area because of the intense fire, Captain Freeman took it upon himself to fly out the wounded. He made 14 separate trips, saving some 30 seriously wounded soldiers. For their actions that day in the Battle of Loudon, Captain Freeman and Major Crandall were awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. How is it that people discover these things about themselves? A sense of urgent mission, courage beyond courage, altruism, skills even that they didn't even know they had before. But in a certain moment, in a certain circumstance, they discover the new dimension in the universe of themselves, and they rise up to meet the challenge. Rachel Cox is a young woman who loves to quilt. Rachel happened to be watching Diane Sawyer on ABC's 2020 when she was doing a special report about the plight of babies in Appalachia. That show struck a chord with Rachel's Appalachian heritage. She grew up in southern Ohio, listening to bluegrass music with her dad, and she had relatives who lived deep in Appalachia. For hours after watching the show, she sat sobbing because she was touched by a memory. Part of my childhood, she says, was seeing babies in the supermarket wearing only diapers with little tiny dirty feet. And then Rachel knew she had to do something. So she reached out to her online community of fellow quilters and blanket makers and presented an idea that became known as Mountain Baby Blankets. She told those quilters and blanket makers of her idea to send blankets to the Christian Appalachian Project and encouraged others to do the same. The response has been incredible, to say the least. Hundreds of quilters have responded to Rachel's call to action. She says, "Our success is only possible because of the talent God has given us and because of the outpouring support from women all over the world. There is a blanket on its way from Israel and another one from England. And it's definitely not just my project. It's certainly my baby, but Mountain Baby Blankets belongs to every woman who has made and is making a blanket for those children there. I want those kids to know that someone loves them and values them. I want them to feel warmth from the blanket not only on their bodies, but in their souls as well." How is it that people discover things about themselves that they never knew were there before? What is it that causes people to suddenly awaken to God's love for the world and the special role they are called to play in God's work of redeeming love? Darrell Chenoweth was once sent by the newspaper he works for to photograph a homeless ministry at the New Life United Methodist Church in Columbus, Ohio. While there, he was so impressed by the ability of this tiny 50-member congregation to reach out and care for homeless people that Doral and his wife Robin decided they needed to join that church. Robin says that Doral has had a sense of deep compassion for the homeless ever since she met him. In fact, on their first date, he stopped the car on a city street to give a blanket to a homeless man. "I thought to myself," Robin says, "if he has this kind of compassion for a man on the street, he's going to make a great husband and father." For his part, Doral says, it's standard operating procedure for him to stop and talk to people who are homeless, whether he's carrying a camera or not. "It's part of my faith," he says. "You may not be able to help someone by giving them money, but you can at least say hello, and how you're doing, and look at them like they're dignified human beings." A few weeks ago, Doral stopped to talk with a scruffy-looking man in the street. He said to the guy, "I'm going to make you work for this $1. Your sign says you have a God-given voice. So let me hear you say something." And today, everybody in America has heard the golden voice of Ted Williams. Now, we pray that Mr. Williams will truly find a new beginning, although we are aware of the risks and the difficulties and the possibility that he might fall again. But how grateful we must be for Darrell Chenoweth and people like him, whose faith gives hope to the hopeless and second chances to people like Ted Williams. How is it that ordinary people like Darrell and Robin Chenoweth discover these life-changing kinds of things about themselves? Well, this is how. It is the way God created life to be lived. It is the way God wired you to live out your humanity. One day, a long, long time ago, a 30-something-year-old single man, still living at home with his mother, working in a carpenter shop, was inspired to go out to the region of the Jordan River. His cousin John, the goofy-looking, scraggly-dressed religious fanatic in the family, was out there recruiting people to take up the cause of the kingdom of God. And that was quite a radical thing to do, since the nation was already under the authority of the kingdom of Rome. When Jesus heard John's appeal, he felt moved to enlist. And so he stepped into the waters of the Jordan to be baptized into the cause. And the Gospel of Mark, the earliest of the four Gospels, describes what happened this way. As Jesus was coming out of the water, he saw heaven being open and the Spirit descending upon him like a dove. And a voice came from heaven, "You're my Son, and I love you." And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of Jesus' incredible ministry of saving the world. I want you to notice that Jesus' awakening came through baptism, which we know as a sacrament of the community of faith. You see, that awakening of people's purpose and calling to greatness is what the church is called to do. Here at the community church, you will never be asked to sit back, relax, and take care of yourself. I'm sorry, we just can't do that. Instead, we share with each other the scriptures, and we sing together the hymns, and we preach sermons that over and over and over again call women and men to dare step more deeply into the universe of their lives and of their soul, and to listen carefully for the whispering of God, calling them to greatness. There is a magnificent universe within you that is infinite with possibility and promise. And you have work to do. Soldiers to save, babies to clothe, homeless people to give hope to. So inside your heart of hearts, can you see the Spirit coming upon you today? Can you hear God saying, "You are my child, and I love you"? The inner universe of God's creation awaits your coming. And Jesus calls us to infinity and beyond.